Hi, I'm Megas, and this is me trying a Canadian YouTube channel called While You Look South. With the constant trash fire of the border that captures the attention of the Canadian public, some of the more sinister types are trying to change out politics of bad to dear God, why? So I'm trying to cover more information on Canadian organizations and bogus journalism whenever I can. I'm not exclusively going to do that, however, I do believe it's important for Canadians to pay more attention to what's going on in their own backyard. And since it's YouTube, also some gaming. Alt-right anti-trans website Reduxx has had their Patreon revoked recently. The following was posted on their Instagram and Twitter. Last week, some rabid trans activists organized a mass report campaign to have Reduxx banned on Patreon. And unfortunately, Patreon bent the knee. It goes on and how they're still going to fight the good fight, yada yada yada, you get the idea. However, this statement is not entirely true. For a site that's claiming to be pro-feminist and anti-bullshit, they're slinging some high-level bovine droppings, because the apparent reason for their Patreon being taken down was because of their own stupidity. But before we go into details, however, you might not know what Reduxx is. Started by two cis-identified females. It could be three, but one of them is a founding member and not a co-founder. I can't find much about MkVaff beyond Reduxx. There is some hints on the internet here and there of her existence. At the moment, I can't get a solid profile on her. However, the other two founding members have quite a bit more out there. Both of them will need their own video one day probably, but here are some basics. We have Mix Ann Slats, formerly known as Anna DeLuca, who is an alleged Nazi sympathizer, known for posting uncritical content from a white nationalist in a student newspaper she worked at, causing some of the staff members to quit, getting arrested for violating New York City's COVID curfew, working for alt-right newspapers Post Millennial and Rebel News, and also, I guess, a certified lolcow. That I didn't know was a thing until I started typing her name to DuckDuckGo. She is also very homophobic. We also have Mix Genevieve Gluck, who interviews mostly anti-trans authors and is obsessed with hypno-porn turning men into trans women. Other cis-identified females have written and translated for Reduxx, some with very problematic backgrounds. Reduxx focuses on crimes of individual transgender people, much like how Der Stromer focuses on the crimes of individual Jewish people. Alleges doing a lot of heavy lifting there, McSlats. Some of the articles are things that actually happened, committed by individuals, projected onto the community. However, if you dig into some of the articles, they seem to be supported by hearsay and conjecture. Those are kinds of evidence, I guess. Or the articles straight up confuse the facts and use baited language to pretty much give a different message altogether. If a trans woman participates in an all-ages event, they'll use a headline like trans-identified male, which is their weird term for trans woman, but whatever, takes first place against 13-year-old girls. And doing some light digging reveals that it's an all-ages event. Heck, some of these are even all-gendered events. They also report falsely in their headlines and in an article about the content of Mount Khalif's leaked medical report. I'm not saying that the report is not Khalif's. However, how come her name never appears in any of the screenshots posted by you or the original author? Heck, even what's shown is very little evidence to go by. The professionals who did the report also said that their findings were intentionally misinterpreted. In addition to claiming to be pro-feminist, the site never seems to really cover other feminist issues, unless they can spin it against trans people. Is there any articles about reproductive rights, domestic abuse, or anything about that? Poverty of single mothers. The site said it's pro-child safeguarding, but doesn't cover a single issue about child poverty or the rise of child labor. Again, unless they can spin it against trans people. So mixed slats and mixed gluts. Why all the bullshit? On to the actual story. So they were selling weapons on Patreon, and that is why they got taken down. Patreon has a no weapons clause in their terms and services / guidelines. If you read the section labeled weapons, you get the following entry. Bladed and edged weapons. Creators are not permitted to sell, distribute, or raffle off bladed and edged weapons. Example, swords, daggers, knives, bayonets on Patreon. Bayonets? That's a specific one. Who sold bayonets on Patreon? Anyways, Reduxx's Patreon page is no longer available. However, good old Internet Archive still has it in their cache, and you can clearly see their top level reward, weapon and all. The weapon is a cat-shaped metal brass knuckle that you can pretty much buy from various locations, even dropship according to Pink News, who's labeled it as a self-defense weapon. Self-defense. So Pink News is another website we should cover and its problem, especially with what came out on Reddit about them, but that's another video. And also they're not Canadian, I think they're British. Most Canadians use Extra, I believe. The one hint that I got that Reduxx probably knew that they were in trouble for selling a weapon is that when they removed their Patreon link from the website, they also removed their merch store link, but just the link. The actual merch store is still up as of recording. And if you go directly to the URL, reduxmerch.info, the item is still listed there. Now, all the items in the store are listed as sold out, but some of them are still available if you check out their Patreon. Well, can't do that anymore. Also, Reduxx may be in more trouble than they know. According to this listing by the seller, these are made of aluminum and thus illegal in Canada. Under Section 84(1) of the Criminal Code of Canada, that classifies it as a prohibited weapon, a list that includes brass knuckles. And owning a pair can lead up to 5 years in jail. Now you might think, oh, well, they drop shipped them. It wouldn't be dumb enough to stock them in Canada. Oh, no, because according to their website, all orders ship from Canada. They also know that selling a weapon is problematic because, as stated in the listing, please note, we declare this item as a keychain for shipping. We cannot guarantee every country is going to like this. In the rare event your item is rejected at your country's border, we will work with you on reshipment or refund. So they promise to help you get around the authorities. There might even be laws about exporting these items from Canada as well, but for sure you can't import them, store them, and ship them around Canada. This seems to me like a case of stochastic terrorism. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that word. It's new to me. They're getting people angry about trans women and selling a weapon to use against them. So this very well could land Anna Slacks back in jail, but don't worry, they've been there before, so they know the drill. The first time she was in jail, some would say was an injustice against journalism. Sure. However, I doubt you can argue that this time. It's interesting, a group that claims they are here to protect women are actively encouraging violence against trans people and encouraging their members to escalate the situation. Reduxx is also funded by PayPal and Stripe payments, both who have policies that Reduxx violates. Will they actually act on those policies? Well, they're corporations that want money, so probably not. They only react on it if it's going to affect their profits, really. They don't care. Thank you for watching my video. I hope to do more in the future. I would also suggest checking out Lily Alexander's video on the feminist far-right pipeline. It helped with some of the language I was using here, I hope. And also, well, I don't have Patreons, and Patreon seems to support these alt-right websites. Despite people complaining to Patreon about Reduxx and saying it violated other parts of the TOS, Patreon decided to only act when it could lead to actual possible legal issues. So I don't think if I did start anything, it would be Patreon, maybe Ko-fi or Ko-fi or however you're supposed to pronounce it. Anyways, have yourself a good day. Thank you. Bye.